Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for listening in advance. Today I'm going to begin a series on healing, self-healing. And I just wanted to start this off by talking about self-reflection. Self-reflection. And I thought that this was a very, important topic because many of us do not self-reflect. We do not turn the mirror inward and see where we truly need to be healed, where we truly need to be restored. So I just want to pose the question, what areas is it that you are challenged in? What areas is it where you know that you are not performing at your top peak? Areas that you need to pay attention to, areas that need to be restored. But for an example, if you are having anxiety attacks, if you are having panic attacks, we need to, first of all, study what's going on. Look up, Google anxiety, Google panic attacks, and begin to know what the signs and symptoms are and why you are experiencing these feelings, these situations, these circumstances. And I'll give you a story. A couple of years ago, I was like engulfed with anxiety and panic attacks. I didn't even really know what was hitting me. I didn't know what was going on. And I look back in hindsight, and over the course of my life, I've always had like depression, just minor, mild depression that I thought, I didn't even put it as depression at first. I was just like, man, I'm just sad, but when I look back and pinpoint certain areas of my life, I was depressed. I didn't even really know I was depressed, but I was depressed. So a few years ago, I'm not even going to say a couple because it's been longer than that, but a few years ago, I began to experience anxiety attacks and panic attacks on 10. Okay, it just escalated to 10, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I was in a weakened state, and the panic attack and the anxieties and stuff just took the opportunity, because at the end of the day, and the disclaimer is, I'm not a doctor, so people who are on anxiety medicines and stuff for chemical imbalances and stuff, I'm not a doctor, so do not get off of your medicine because of my words. If you get off of your medicine, it's because your faith and your ambitions have instructed you to get off of those drugs. So yeah, we'll go back to whenever I was having panic attacks and anxiety. I was having them because my mind wasn't in line with the things that the Lord was saying to me. I was like, I became depressed because I was going through a life change. I had just recently went through a divorce. I had moved. I had just did a whole bunch of life changes. And you don't think that stuff is true when people say they go through midlife, crisis is what they call it. When people say that they go through midlife situations, but that's I believe that that's true in hindsight, because that's exactly when everything kind of came down on me. It came down on me at the time when I was getting ready to turn 50. And so many life changes had taken place in the course of 2 years. And by the time I was getting ready to turn 50 was the time when I had to deal with my own self-reflection. I had to deal with issues. I had to deal with the feelings that I had numbed. I had to deal with a whole lot of things that I previously hadn't dealt with correctly. Even if I thought I dealt with it, I didn't deal with it correctly. So that brings me to this point here. Whenever you're going through a situation or a circumstance, make sure that you deal with the situation properly. Get out of the habit, ladies, of sweeping stuff under the rug. Get out of the habit of just like being angered and not releasing that anger. Get out of the habits of saying, I'm all right, when really you are not all right. It is okay to say that you need to talk to somebody. I'm not talking about a psychiatrist, but if that's what you choose, then that's what you choose. But I'm talking about those confidants. I'm talking about your friends, a pastor, whoever you need to talk to. Talk to that person, just find the resources that will help usher you out of that state of being. It's okay to be angry, but the scriptures tell us to be angry and sin not. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel fearful, but you have to override that fear. Because the scriptures have taught us that fear is not of the Lord, and fear brings torment. I'm talking about ungodly fear. I'm not talking about godly fear, because we are supposed to fear the Lord with a holy reverence toward Him. That's the fear He's talking about. And our fear, our fight or flight can sometimes, save our lives. Sometimes we will be in that high anxiety moment. Even athletes, they have these high intensity, anxious moments. And not just athletes, but it's okay to have those anxious moments. But you cannot live in a perpetual state of anxiousness and anxiety and think that you're going to come out okay, because it causes your adrenal gland to be overactive. It causes your nervous system to get off kilter, and it begins to cause chemical imbalances, because you start depleting magnesiums and your potassiums and your things in your bodies that are supposed to balance out. You become imbalanced. So be aware of that. So what I would do whenever I was going through that state, and I would do this in the midst of going through that state. I mean, I was I could be sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden I would feel the tentacles of this demon, of this spirit coming upon me. I would be able to feel whenever this was beginning to come. And I didn't understand it at first. I was like, oh my goodness, it would just bring more anxiety, and I would tense my body up. And the fear was oh my goodness, the fear was at such a high intensity in me. I was walking around with this fear factor that normally I think I always had, but it was always on a scale of 1 or 2. And maybe sometimes it might have hit a higher number through the course of my life, and I'm almost positive and sure that it probably did, but I just didn't know how to identify it. So at this point, it was at a 10. In my opinion, it was at a 10, because I was walking around in a fear. Even whenever the anxiety wasn't overtaking me, I would still have a generalized anxiety. I would still have a generalized fear that something was going to happen. So I would go to the library just so I wouldn't have to go home sometimes. If I didn't want to go to an isolated place, I would just take my tablet and a pen and my computer, and I would go to the library and just do research. I would do research on my computer on anxieties, depressions, and I began to discover a whole lot of things. So I would also go to the Word of God, because I said, okay, I got to, Father, what is going on? What is going on? So I began to learn. So whenever I got to the point to where when this anxiety would try to like override me, I was beginning to get stronger, because I was gaining knowledge, and I began to say, okay, I'm getting ready to feel this anxiety attack. I'm getting ready to ride this wave out and see what this thing is doing. And I began to, when I would have this anxiety attack, I would like let it come. No, I mean, I wasn't letting it come. It was going to come, but I was just like facing it. And I would just be like, okay, now I'm feeling this. You know, it's making me feel fearful. You know, what am I thinking in this moment? What am I thinking? So I began to I began to what's the word I'm looking for? I began to stalk it. I began to stalk the anxiety when it would come upon me. I began to say, okay, what is it doing? How long blah, blah. I just started like experimenting per se. So then I started becoming not afraid of it. I began to be strengthened towards it in the Lord, because of the word that was beginning to rise up in me, the standard that was beginning to rise up in me. So I would just stalk it. When it would come, I would stalk it. So then I got to the point to where once I learned what it did to me, I started whenever I would feel it come, I'd be like, in the name of Jesus, I bind up anxiety. I forbid you from operating. I cast down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And I take every thought captive. And I begin to say, I will not die, but I will live to proclaim the works of the Lord. I just began to start attacking it head on with the word of what the Lord has said about me. I began to attack it, and it got weaker. So I realized that it got weaker. And the scriptures tell us, to submit to the Lord, resist the devil, and he'll flee. So I had to put into practice the word. We study the word all our lives. A lot of us do. We're not study. Some people don't study, but we hear the word. Well, many hear. I'm not saying everybody, but I have heard the word. And throughout my life, I would put things to practice. But at that point in my life, it was time to put other things to practice and really, really, really believe. I had to really, really, really believe. My faith was tested. Because there were times when I was walking around and I would get dizzy sometimes. The anxiety and the depression was just so high. It had me off kilter. I was imbalanced. So I would sometimes lay in the bed and I would be then this attack would come on me and I would just curl up in a ball and just be scared. Oh my goodness, what's going on, Lord, am I gonna die? All of this. So I had to put my trust in the Lord for real, that he was gonna bring me through this. I had to put my trust in the Lord, and it didn't just happen overnight. It was a journey. And now I believe that I went through that journey so that I can help other people to come out. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull you out by any means necessary. I'm not talking about something that I just heard other people talking about or something that I just saw on TV or read in a book. I'm talking about a place that I was at. I was in a pit. I was in a pit of despair. I found myself in a pit of despair. That I'm not necessarily going to say that other people got me in. I can pretty much say that I got my own self in, but I had to depend on the Lord to help me get out of. I couldn't get out of it by myself. I could not get out of this by myself. And as women, we have to realize that, because we are so used to having to get out of situations by ourselves. You know, being wives, being mothers, being, you know, like on the job sites, you know, just being a woman, you know, we have like a natural nurturing tendency. So we'll kind of like take on things that we don't have to take on just to get it off of somebody else, you know, to get it off of husbands, to get it off of children, to get it off of our parents, to get it off of our sisters and brothers, to get it off of our, you know, co-workers. I mean, we take on things that we don't necessarily have to take on. You know, we're going to have to stop being superheroes all the time. Be your own superhero to yourself. Be the superhero to yourself and self-reflect and bring yourself out. Get yourself into safety. Get yourself into the safety zone. Stop trying to like pull everybody else into safety. Now, if you can get them in there without taking an L, without taking a loss, then by all means. By all means. But don't sacrifice your own well-being for somebody else's well-being. That's not what the Lord has brought you to. That's not what you are designed to do. Because every person has to give an account for themselves once they get to a certain age. Now, we can talk to them and we can like try to push and pull them. But sis, if they don't want to be moved, then you are not going to move them. I promise you, you are not going to move them. Now, the Lord can move them, but that just you just have to like put prayer on them. You know, just pray for them and let them go. Let them go. Let them go. And just pray for your own self that you just stay out of the way and let the Lord work on them. But anyway, sis, I don't want to make this video too long, but there will be videos to follow, and I will have guest speakers, you know, people on panels, and we're going to like talk about this healing. We're going to talk about this series of self-healing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually. Yeah, even sexually. Because I believe that whenever you're like, especially if you grew up in a church, a four-wall structured church, and a lot of times those churches were more so religious. And whenever you're growing up in that sector, then it's a lot of things that a lot of things that you put on your own self because of what was being taught to you. Things that were incorrect. You know, because we are like a balance. We're supposed to be balanced, and that's in all areas. You know, the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and sexual. But the sexual ability, most of the time, is either one of two extremes. Excuse me. You're either like promiscuous, you know, because you're acting in rebellion, or either you've just like locked everything up and you're not even allowing yourself to like thrive as a sexual being. Now, I'm not saying intercourse sex if you're not married. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you still have to know and understand and grow your sexuality. You still have to be familiar with it. Because if you came up in the school I came up in the era that I came up in, a lot of times, you know, it was like deemed, just don't get pregnant, you know, don't be having sex. You know, pregnancy and stuff wasn't like looked at like it is nowadays. People just like say, okay, well, we going to have a baby shower, you got pregnant, okay, yeah, good. But back in the day, it wasn't welcomed like that because it was still a standard. So our sexuality was not groomed. Sexuality was like basically doomed. Unless you got married and everything, and then there was still nobody there to teach you how to do what you need to do in order to be, like competitive with your man, you know what I'm saying? Back in the day, you know what I mean? So yeah, we're gonna heal in all areas. So please look out for other videos and everything, and let's get this thing started, and let's do what we gotta do to be wholesome, whole women, and let's enjoy life. We are here to enjoy life. We are put on this earth for a reason, and we're supposed to have the joy of the Lord, which is our strength, but he made us into like a well-rounded being. We are a well-rounded person, so we're going to have to like dig in, and we're going to have to turn that mirror inward on us, and we're going to have to like self-reflect, and we're going to have to like get it right and not be ashamed. Not be ashamed. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and have a good day, and I will talk to you soon.